back of the rim. Garnett on the slam. Oh, using Curry way downtown. Oh, what a shot from Curry.
Okay, we have a ton of deadline stuff to discuss. It's easily the craziest deadline I've ever lived through, and because of one deal, yeah, it could be the craziest ever. But I wanted to talk about how each of these are affecting the NBA's future, and a lot of teams did things and a lot of teams didn't do things, and each of those are going to shape basketball really headed through the rest of the 2020s and into the 2030s. So that's what we'll be discussing today after a word from our sponsor, DraftKings. Super Bowl 59 is right around the corner, and it's the perfect time to get in on the action with my partners at DraftKings Sportsbook. Right now, they're giving all new customers $200 in bonus bets instantly after betting just $5. This is your shot to make every last play a moment to be remembered. Don't wait. Download the DraftKings app now and sign up using code DOM2K. Stay in on the action and use your $200 in bonus bets on DraftKings same game parlays for a shot at an even bigger payout. Combine multiple bets together from the same game. Into the thrill of live betting? DraftKings has got you covered. Bet live on in-progress games right as they happen, making watching a game that much more exciting. If sports betting is not yet available in your state, don't worry. You can still join in on all the fun with DraftKings Daily Fantasy and have the shot to win cash prizes. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. New customers use my promo code DOM2K and bet just $5 on any wager and get $200 in bonus bets instantly. That's promo code DOM2K only at DraftKings Sportsbook. So we can obviously kick this off by talking about the actual historically significant trade, Luka to the Lakers, and I think this tweet by Luka updates just about sums up how unbelievable it is and the fact that it's floating back around. This is from June 5th, 2023, where he says, LeBron's last ring will be Luka's first. And after the last game of the finals, LeBron will reach with his hand up, take a crown off his head, put it on Luka's head, and announce his retirement. And that's about the level of fanfic. Just literally a week ago, we would have been talking about surrounding Luka in a Lakers jersey. And even now, every single time I see it, I just don't believe it. If he's wearing a Lakers logo, if he's recording a video saying hi to Lakers fans, it just feels like the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen in my time watching the NBA. So I don't know, any number of ways you would want to take this and how it's altering the rest of what we're about to witness in 10 plus years. You can go either direction. Like, LeBron is now playing with one of the guys who is the face of the next generation of players. This comes at the end of his career, as the Luka updates what used to be fanfic was alluding to, which is crazy because the way his career was ending, we were writing other fanfic about, okay, maybe he ends up with Steph. They're both on mid teams. They both, from where they were, really didn't have a chance of winning another championship, and maybe they do it together. And after this Luka trade, he said he didn't want out. From what we know with the Lakers, they don't want him to want out. And when this first went down, I was thinking, okay, maybe a LeBron trade is in the near future, not because, obviously he has to sign off on wherever he goes. It was less about the fit and more about the amount of time it's going to take to get the roster from where it is today to actual championship level around a 40-plus-year-old LeBron and now, mid-20s Luka. And here, right before the trade deadline, well, really, it was about 12 hours ago, they actually did get Mark Williams, who I'm going to assume a vast majority are not familiar with because he's been playing for the Hornets. Yeah, can't say a whole lot about if this puts them over the top. I don't think it does. I've seen some people way higher on it than I am. I will say, yes, next to LeBron, next to Luka, with how they like to throw lobs, with the passing threats that they are, perfect fitting guy. And given that 12 hours ago their starting center would have probably been Jackson Hayes, yes, this is a massive upgrade. They were able to do this by sending away Dalton Connect and some picks. Sorry, specifically it was Connect, Cam Reddish, and a 2031 unprotected and a 2030 pick swap. So Charlotte continues to do what they do and trying to get young guys, having draft capital. LA begins the process of putting something respectable around two of the greatest players of all time. I would be deeply surprised if LeBron, Luka, and what they have right now was enough to get them over the hump this season. And so you go into summer, I'm gonna guess there's a good number of players who would probably want to be in LA now. They're no longer really quote unquote stuck. They're gonna be active really from even the time I'm recording this. The trade deadline hasn't actually commenced yet. They're gonna be active from now till then and all over summer. Yeah, they've got a ways to go. But for history, I mean, bro, Dallas just randomly, and I get the despair there, and I've never seen a fan base more demoralized than I've seen over the last week or so. And I get it. They woke up in the face of their franchise, for which they were hoping and were thinking was going to be probably over the next decade or so. Just vanished with no great explanation. So LA's got their next storyline, no matter what that may be. And for Dallas, it's the fallacy that they've kind of sold the fan base of, hey, look, we did get AD for it. We got a great player. We're still trying to be competitive. We're still trying to win right now. And I'm not even saying that can't happen. I'm just saying it's not likely, and it didn't make sense to gamble that hard right now. There's been more info since then. They've called Luka fat some more, said they didn't like the team of trainers and such that he kind of brought on his own. Whatever reasons they've thrown out there, it just still didn't make sense to basically pack him up and put him on LA's front doorstep. And I will say just here, yes, the world naturally has kind of discounted how good of a player AD is and how good that Mavs team still is. I just think we're kind of at the point where people aren't expecting a Kyrie and AD led team to really go far, especially in a season where they've kind of been battling injury nonstop. These are two guys who battled injury throughout their career. They're gonna have to take all that in the next 4 months to make this make sense. They're gonna have to take all that in the next 4 months and go win a championship. And if they don't, they have to deal with Kyrie's player option this summer. He hadn't even really said anything about Luka yet because he's hurt. Hell, he's just kind of said he's in the grieving phase. You could just tell by all the player interviews, none of them were really cool with this shit. And yeah, a big piece of this kind of depends on what he does this summer. And even if he does stay, once again, that clock with he and AD is just not long. It just looks like they did this move, which was very sketch, and brought back a team where they could say, hey, look, it can still contend. Yeah, theoretically it can. Maybe they will make some type of run this year or be surprisingly competitive in the playoffs or go surprisingly far. I'm just not sure past maybe 2 years what Dallas is going to do. Whereas they kind of had this face to hopefully build around, and we've learned there was no indication he wasn't going to sign an extension. That's what they had to work with, and now it's just kind of how fast can Kyrie and AD win with this team that was left over from last year's finals. Big implications for Dallas in the future, for that entire franchise, for what they do, who's the next guy. Hell, I'm even in the back of my mind still kind of questioning, where do they go physically? And regardless of where it is, as we stand today, it will go down as the craziest, most blindsiding trade in NBA history. Looks like LeBron is gonna get at least a decent farewell tour that doesn't involve him being a playing team for the rest of his career. I still don't even know what to do with that. It's gonna be a lot of fun watching Bron and Luka. I mean, these are two huge forwards with elite court vision, just still elite players. Yeah, that part is gonna be fun. I am still waiting to see what they do in the rest of the market. And yeah, just keep an eye there for the next couple of years. I will throw in as a very useless note, me and my guys have done a lot of simulations since this happened, and Dallas does win a surprising amount. So yeah, like I said, it's 2K, completely useless. How about Jimmy Butler to the Warriors? Okay, so this is how we are rounding the Steph era out. They have traded Wiggins, Schroeder, draft capital. Out of all the teams we've been forced to listen to Jimmy Butler being interested in or not being interested in, he ends up on Golden State after they didn't get Kevin Durant back because he didn't want to go back. So Jimmy, not only do they get him, he's got his extension too, $60 million per over 2 years. Wow. Needless to say, this team is not good enough to win as it is right now. Jimmy doesn't really change that. He does give them, it looks like out of everything they could have done, it gives them the best chance to be able to maximize the rest of the Steph era, because they couldn't get any calls about LeBron. Now he's with Luka. Couldn't get KD to want to come back. I think whatever's happening with Giannis, which we'll get to, is probably still a little ways off. They kind of have to, or had to look at what are we going to do for the rest of this season and the season after, because Steph says his clock is running. They ended up kind of just having to default to Jimmy, which hours before it happened, I swore I had read he didn't want to go to Golden State, and now he's there with an extension. So like I said, we never really know what's happening behind NBA doors. Either way, yes, this trade has, as we know it today, written what what will happen with the rest of Steph Curry's career. Since it would appear the whole Curry and Bron fanfic plot is dead, they'll do whatever they're going to do this year, whether it's sneaking in the play-in or sneaking into the playoffs through the play-in, probably still a first round out, maybe second. It's really summer that we're looking for to be able to complete the rest of the story, because yeah, now that you do have another star player next to Steph, old albeit, you've got an established name there. That's what they've been asking for. This was the best they could do. Whatever they put around it will determine how far they can go and how the Steph era ends. Obviously a giant risk. You've got Jimmy and Draymond in the same locker room. And even, you know, beyond Draymond, it's just Jimmy. We've seen what's happened with every team he's been on so far. We've seen what happens when he gets unhappy. We know what it's like in the regular season versus the playoffs. It was a desperate move. It was definitely a desperate move by Golden State. And look, it was kind of either this or you're talking about where to send Steph, which clearly Golden State is one of those franchises. They've had this generational star. You don't want to trade him. It's like when the Lakers had Kobe. It's like where any franchise has had a generational star, because I bring this up only as I was thinking about it earlier, how Danny Ainge handled the 08 Celtics, or that Celtics core, the big three core. And I remember way before it ended, we always heard that, hey, this is not a thing where we're just all friends and it's kumbaya and we're going to let them ride off into the sunset. He said, no, when it's time to trade them and move on from this core, we're going to do that. And I'm only thinking about it in this context because when you look at Golden State, if you take the human element out, I think it's pretty obvious they probably should have went ahead and wrapped up the Curry era. Once again, you don't trade Curry, and especially if you're Golden State, you've got a lot more than basketball reasons for why you don't trade Curry. Though when that doesn't happen and you don't get to go ahead and restart with whatever that would have gotten you, who knows? Now you're paying Jimmy Butler 120 mil and hoping to the high heavens you can fill that roster out with a championship supporting cast pretty much right now. Talking about to the end of the season and then the summer. You have to do this immediately. Both of them are old. It's not a great situation, and it's not one they really have too many ways out of when it's time, unless they pull a rabbit out of the hat. So yeah, as far as I know, there was never any real discussions of Curry trade, and especially given his age and, you know, the fact everyone isn't Bron and playing until they're 40 or 45 apparently. Sure, it's not a route that was ever taken seriously, though now we can see how it's ended. If it doesn't end in a title, I honestly think we'll just kind of look back and say, hey, they got one more title in the golden era in 2022. They were able to, by a miracle, get Clay back in one piece and go on that run. Though it had kind of been cooked since those injuries happened. Just every year things piled on, a missed trade here, a missed draft here. The core just aged out. They lost one piece of it already, and they've just been doing the best they can, I guess, to finish gracefully, which is just a hard thing in this league. It's very hard to finish gracefully. So this is the direction Golden State has chosen. And yeah, Miami, you know, I wasn't sure if Pat Riley was going to bend to Jimmy Butler's wishes. He waited until the very last possible day, didn't send him exactly where he wanted. And yeah, they got the biggest piece they got out of this is Andrew Wiggins. You get a wing that's younger than Jimmy, that fits what they're doing right now, and a player who isn't causing a million distractions. That's very underrated. At least this way they can kinda Jimmy, well, no pun intended, Jimmy their way out of the Butler era. Do it while still having some young pieces, a good roster, one that isn't, you know, too conceivably far away from being able to do something if they were able to actually land a big fish one day. For now though, in terms of just having to get out of a situation which soured very quickly, yeah, this was good. This was decent. They can finally begin to think about other things. Now, this deal does loosely relate to the Suns because of Kevin Durant and the potential he had to go back to Golden State, and then Jimmy Butler, who was for some reason just hell-bent on getting to Phoenix. Well, neither happened. It does not look as if Durant will be moved. And if he isn't, well, yeah, they're exactly where they were when I made the 2020s video. Sure, they've got Nick Richards since then. Cool, that was a need. Though they just don't have a ton of their other issues figured out. They've also picked up some picks since then, but boy, couldn't get off a Beal. Still has that no trade clause. Still has that crazy contract. KD is still aging. Booker's prime is still burning. Phoenix, by not being able to do pretty much anything over this trade deadline, is, whew, yeah, That's an organization since the new management took over, which has been being run like a 2K team. Let's just call it what it is. And I am very, very intrigued to see how they get out of this spot because, yeah, they're not LA. I don't think anybody will be doing a behind the scenes deal to bring them their franchise cornerstone out of nowhere. Oh, good luck, Phoenix. A move we probably didn't expect to see, which materialized earlier in the morning. Yeah, Chris Middleton being sent to the Wizards, and boy, so they won a championship in 2021 with Drew and Chris by Giannis's side. They sent Drew to Portland basically a day after he had said how much he loved Milwaukee and wanted to be there forever. They did that, and they sent Chris Middleton to Washington, and they did it in a move for Kuz, which is at its best, I guess, could give you something, and you got a little younger, though I don't know. You put a 29% shooter on the floor with Giannis, 3-point shooter. Hasn't really been great for him since he left LA. Obviously, this deal does not move the needle, which is why I wanted to really bring Milwaukee up, because once again, this is another team where we had kind of been starting, or at least I have kind of been starting to look at their future. It's an old team, doesn't have great depth, has kind of been suffering on the wings for a little bit. The whole Lillard and Giannis ploy has not done anywhere near as well as we thought it would, and they both don't have a ton of time. In NBA terms, they don't have a ton of time left on their contracts. Meanwhile, Giannis, I always mention, he's never fully committed to the city, to this team, says he loves them, but has never hesitated to let him know if it has to change, it has to change. And yeah, don't look now, they are on the road to having to change. I'm sorry, especially after this trade. They're just, when you look at certain teams, there isn't a whole lot they can always do. Going to get Dame was the biggest thing they could have done for a long time. But you go back and watch everything we all said when they acquired Dame. I believe we were so scared because we were also thinking of it in the context of having a way better Middleton than they ever got throughout that era. And now he's gone. So not only is he gone, he's gone for a player who I don't think is going to change the situation so much. That's where they fit into this video, because a lot of what's happened in the last couple of years, a lot of what just happened at this trade deadline could be very interesting in a few years when we're looking back on what's happened with the rest of Giannis's career. This will be even more fun to look at depending on what happens in the playoffs. Are they actually even going to get a healthy run? If they are healthy, how far do they go? If they are healthy and they don't go far at all, well, that's where the Giannis comment is probably going to come, that yearly or bi-yearly Giannis comment about, maybe we need to look at something else or think about something else. Yeah, I'd be a little bit afraid. If I was supporting Milwaukee today, I'd just be a tiny bit afraid of what's happening next. And probably last and definitely not least, how about San Antonio? The first domino has dropped. They went out and got De'Aaron Fox. Somehow they kept Vassell in that deal. And once again, 2020's video, you go look at the player I had as a placeholder for who might be with Wemby one day. Well, he is with Wemby today. De'Aaron Fox has predictably been dealt from the Kings, and this is just something I felt I saw coming from, I would guess, the little run where everything was so exciting with Sabonis, because it was definitely fun, and I understood why Sacramento fans were so geeked, but I didn't get why they were talking so much. It was just at a time where, okay, Sabonis and Fox, this is your core. And anyone watching them consistently could see it probably didn't have championship potential. The clock was going to run eventually, and then we got to the point where Fox didn't sign his extension, and of course people are going, oh, that doesn't mean much, we gotta wait. I can't remember who I was watching on NBA TV. He kept it so real though. He's like, Fox didn't sign the extension, that tells the front office something. It's unspoken. And yeah, he's now next to Wembanyama. Huge deal. This is one of the most electric guards in our game, playing with what's going to be one of the most electric players in history, if he's not already. And San Antonio has done this in year 2 of Wemby. So unlike some of the other stars we've seen and even talked about in this video, where it takes a little bit for them to get another really known face next to them, it has taken the Spurs barely over a year. They understand what they have, they acted accordingly, and they did it in a way which did not rock the boat too damn much. Now they've got that duo, it's established, they've got talent to develop around them, and they probably won't have a hard time finding more help to really become the roadblock of the West. That's what's in their future. If it's managed properly, this is what is in San Antonio's future. It's really not tough. It was going to be somebody. I was looking at a lot of the stars who seem to be running up upon dead situations, dead ends. Fox was definitely one of them. Very intriguing era coming up in San Antonio basketball. And yeah, the Kings were able to go get Levine and him with DeRozan again. But hey, they've got some picks now. So they get to do what they pretty much always do, you know, be mid, get a draft pick, maybe get something cool, probably not. This is just par for the course for the Kings. Hopefully it turns into something for them. It was a really fun thing for them to finally be good. That fan base was electric. Oh yeah, before I leave this section, it's so forgettable with Chicago. They're always so forgettable. I damn near didn't mention. In that deal, they got Zach Collins, Trey Jones, Kevin Huerter, and their own 2225 pick via San Antonio. So they held on to Zach LaVine way longer than they needed to. They still have Vucevic at the end of this day. They have a ton of point guards on the roster. And yeah, at this point, look, Chicago has just paid in blood for the Jordan era. I'm sorry, Kenny. I'm so truly sorry. Okie dokie, so obviously the Fox trade was not the last thing. Right after I hit stop recording, Brandon Ingram is a Toronto Raptor. Okie dokie, didn't see this one coming. Did believe eventually the Zion and Ingram thing was going to get broken up. I had been repeating over the years, even if they were healthy and got to play together, I didn't think it fit at a super high level. I also didn't think Ingram was getting sent to Toronto, and especially, you know, not for Bruce Brown, Kelly Olynyk, a first round and a second rounder. For the Pelicans, this is just an obvious thing. They've been unfortunate now for about 4 or 5 straight years. I don't even think they got a healthy run together. We've been talking about Zion potentially being traded. They said kind of early on this season anyone was going to be available, and so they sent Ingram away. Here with like an hour left, it does not appear Zion will be traded, but I think one day, one way or another, that is kind of coming. Pelicans going to be wanting to get draft capital, going to be wanting to get guys to kind of start over with, I would assume. And the Ingram deal doesn't really do that for them, which is why I am sort of surprised Zion isn't getting moved today. If you're looking at the Raptors, I mean, their roster is a lot of good young guys now, which is funny because, yeah, I don't know if this team is going to be, and even going forward, bad enough to really place where they'd like in the lottery. A lot of Toronto fans think that doesn't really ever work out for them anyways. So now you've got Scotty developing, you've got Ingram, who is kind of already established, very likely as good as he's already going to be, and we'll be very interested. Toronto has somewhat of a direction now, especially when you come into starting next season. Depending on whatever they do in the off season, this can be a pretty decent team. And yeah, I think just decent. You know, more moves will come next year. You know how Masai moves. The trade, in my opinion, does at least move them for the future out of that tier where they just kind of don't exist. However, that you know, it's really close to no man's land too when you're a team who isn't necessarily good enough for anything, but not going to be bad enough to where you're gonna land the #1 pick or a really high pick. This is why I'm very interested in their future. Oh buddy, and as we speak, the very near future just got extremely interesting for the Cleveland Cavaliers, who have turned Karis LeVert, Niang, and 3 second-round picks and 2 swaps into DeAndre Hunter. They turned that into Hunter. Let me tell you something about Cleveland, and specifically as it pertains to them playing Boston this year. The one thing I didn't know how they really plan to deal with in the postseason specifically was those Garland switches at the end of games. You watch and you'll notice it was just a glaring deficiency. Boston has got 2 big wings, 2 star wings. They've got a lot of big players. The MO was basically, hey, let's put Garland in action. Let's try to switch him. Sometimes you see Porzingis end up on him. Sometimes it's Tatum and you get a straight drive. To Garland's credit, he fights. Though I was just looking down the road into playoff series where I'm going, they kind of don't have a great answer for that. They just got DeAndre Hunter, who is having a hell of a season. Bigger body, versatile, shoots 40 from 3. They can now plug a player who you can't ignore on offense into that equation, who will also provide on defense. Wow, masterclass of a move from the Cavaliers, especially for what they got it for. I think Hunter's skill set is more valuable to them than what they were getting out of Karis LeVert next to Donovan Mitchell. And this one made me look at them more seriously. I already looked at Cleveland as a really good team. I just think in beating Boston 4 times, they were missing something. This kind of was that something. Not saying they're going to beat Boston 4 times, but boy, do they have a much better chance at it than they had an hour ago. And if you're Atlanta, it's interesting in that you sold high, and I would say appropriately so, on DeAndre Hunter. This Hawks team is not close to anything. Trae Young's clock continues to burn. The one positive thing they had going with Jalen Johnson kind of ended for this season. He is out with the injury, and the Hawks remain mid, as they have been pretty much, well, their entire existence, but definitely most of Trae's tenure. We came into the season, specifically throughout summer, thinking Trae was more than likely going to start the process of being shopped and such. It didn't really happen. The team is where it is. I am still kind of looking at it with my hands up. I very much believe the Hawks probably will be looking to need to restart here soon if they don't magically pull another star out of the hat for him somewhere down the road. For now, they've got some pieces and they've got some capital, and it'll be instrumental in their future. And so yeah, right as I stopped recording that part, the Atlanta Hawks also sent Bogdanovic to the Clippers. They got Terrence Mann and Bones Highland in return, and the Hawks also sent them 3 second-round picks. So everything Atlanta did led me to believe about 10 minutes before the deadline, I guess Trae Young must be getting moved. I don't know. He didn't get moved, and yeah, now their future is being described as murky. I think the whole deal is Trae was supposed to be moved this summer. Now a whole another year has burned off of his contract. He hasn't really said anything, but I think the writing is on the wall. Atlanta and their future, nothing has worked out with the Trae Young era. Didn't happen now. I guess it's gonna happen in the summer. There's just no way, unless something magical happens for that franchise, which never has. Trae Young can't be there too much longer. It makes no sense for either side, and not especially with how they just moved. Oh yeah, one more really small note with this and why I am still so puzzled by ATL. The Spurs own their picks, and so if they're bad, the pick just goes to San Antonio, and they are probably going to continue to be mid and or bad. So yeah, I don't know. I have no clue. So yeah, we are here. That was the 2025 NBA trade deadline. There was a lot of small moves around, some not mentioned in this video, and there were a lot of huge moves that I'd be hard pressed to say didn't just change the next 10 years of basketball. It's gonna be a lot of fun going forward. If you enjoyed this video, hit the like button, comment, and sub while hitting the bell next to my name if you want notifications every time a new video drops. Appreciate you watching, and I'll see you all on the next one.